What happens when a machine refuses to disappear into the past and instead becomes a legend? The Mercedes-Benz 300 SL is more than a piece of engineering. It is a memory forged in steel, shaped by speed, and kept alive by the men and women who once dared to trust their lives to the road. Many years have passed since its tires first touched the asphalt. The world has changed, the cities have grown, and the noise of modern life has taken over. Yet this car still carries a quiet voice from another time. For those of us who remember the smell of fuel, the sound of engines at dawn, and the feeling of freedom on an open highway, this machine is not just history. It is a companion from our youth, a reminder of courage, elegance, and dreams that never truly faded. And tonight, that memory awakens once again. One moment, one heartbeat, and one timeless journey at a time. The silence inside the garage does not merely surround the car, it holds it, the way memory holds a moment that refuses to fade. The Mercedes-Benz 300 SL rests in the half-light, its chrome breathing out a faint glimmer, as if time itself remains sealed within its curves. Dust hangs in the air like ghosted motion, and the scent of old fuel lingers with the quiet weight of stories unfinished. The body of the car reflects the world around it, yet in each reflection there seems to be another era, another life, another road that once demanded courage. The stillness is not calm, it is anticipation, the kind that rises just before a heart begins to beat again. Something here feels remembered rather than forgotten, a presence suspended between past and present, waiting for history to open its eyes once more. The garage feels like a room where time chose not to move forward, where decades rest gently across every surface. Light settles along the body of the 300 SL as though it is touching something sacred, tracing lines shaped by motion long ago. The air carries nostalgia, but it is a nostalgia woven with tension, with the quiet weight of journeys that once came close to danger. The car does not sit idly. It occupies the space, like a boundary between what was lived and what is still felt. Every curve seems to hold a memory. Every bolt feels like a sentence in a story that never finished speaking. The moment hangs there, still, fragile, unresolved, as though the past stands just behind the present, waiting for someone to let it breathe again. There is a sense that the car remembers long before history begins to speak. The world surrounding it seems to awaken slowly, as though memory itself has been sleeping under layers of steel and time. The leather, the metal, the frame, all feel as if they still carry the rhythm of old roads, the weight of speed, the tension of nights when life walked hand in hand with risk. The car feels less like an object and more like a vessel, one that holds courage, fear, triumph, and longing within its silent body. Its presence suggests moments once lived at the edge of possibility, where every mile carried meaning and every breath carried uncertainty. Nothing moves, yet everything feels alive, as if memory has been waiting patiently for the world to remember what it once dared to be. The story of this machine begins not in wealth or certainty, but in the fragile aftermath of a world rebuilding itself. It was born in a time when factories reopened under tired hands, when steel carried both scars and hope, when innovation was not ambition, but survival. Out of that landscape emerged an idea shaped by racing, precision, discipline, and quiet defiance. The 300 SL was not created as an ornament of luxury. It was forged as a declaration that ingenuity could rise from hardship, that beauty could grow from resilience, and that the future would be shaped not by fear, but by determination. It became more than engineering. It became a symbol, a testament to a world rediscovering the will to move forward. Beyond the factories, the world itself was changing, and every street carried the contrast between struggle and renewal. Cities still bore the marks of conflict, yet storefronts reopened, vehicles returned to the roads, and people began to believe in motion again. Industry became more than production, it became cultural meaning. Cars were no longer simple machines that carried people from one place to another. They became symbols of strength, confidence, and modern identity. In workshops and assembly halls, pride lived beside exhaustion. People built not just for income, but for dignity and future generations. The environment around the 300 SL was one of tension and hope, risk and resilience standing together. The gullwing frame, the sleek lines, the promise of speed, all reflected a world eager to move forward, but still haunted by memory. And within that fragile balance, legends were not announced loudly. They grew quietly, formed by hands that believed progress could exist even in the shadow of uncertainty. Inside the workshop, the idea begins to take shape, not as a completed masterpiece, but as a bold question drawn across paper and steel. The mechanic studies the fragile framework, the tubes and joints that form a skeleton unlike any road car before it. The engineer speaks with determination, describing a machine that will carry racing spirit into everyday roads, a car that must be light, fast, precise, and fearless. Doubt lingers in the room, but so does ambition. Every wrench turn reveals a possibility. Every calculation exposes a risk. They argue about weight, balance, airflow, heat, and strength, knowing that one mistake could undo everything. Yet they continue, driven by something greater than confidence: belief. The vision is not only technical, it is emotional. They are not simply building a vehicle, they are shaping a promise, a declaration that innovation can defy limitation. Piece by piece, the machine begins to become real, and beneath the sound of tools and voices, one unspoken truth rises: if this vision succeeds, it will not only create a car, it will create a legend. The prototype runs again, and now every test is felt through real components, not theory. The tubular space frame flexes under load, every weld line carrying stress like a heartbeat inside the chassis. The inline-six engine pushes through the crankshaft, vibration traveling into the steering column, through the thin magnesium steering wheel rim, into the driver's hands. The Bosch mechanical fuel injection pump delivers fuel with precision, but hesitation reveals itself inside throttle linkages and injector lines. The rear swing axle suspension reacts sharply over bumps, coil springs compressing, shock absorbers fighting to control rebound. The gearbox resists shifts at high RPM, the clutch plate chattering under pressure, the driveline echoing through the prop shaft. Heat builds in the engine bay, around the radiator, oil cooler, and exhaust manifold, creeping toward the firewall and pedals. Drum brakes fade after repeated stops, linings sizzling, brake fluid warming in the lines. Strength. Weakness. Progress. Failure. Every lap tells the truth mechanically, not emotionally. Small breakthroughs arrive through revised spring rates, a new cooling duct, a reinforced mounting point. Hope and doubt alive inside metal, steel, rubber, and heat. The struggles reveal themselves where paper drawings never could. The space frame twists under endurance runs, hairline stress marks appearing near cross tubes, forcing reinforcement of joints and gussets. The steering box loads unevenly under cornering, the pitman arm and tie rods transmitting shock straight into the wheel. Rear camber shifts aggressively as the swing axle bites into the road, forcing geometry revisions no one expected. The cooling system strains. Coolant surges through the radiator core, hoses expand, clamps loosen, and hot air finds every escape path along the firewall seams. Oil temperature rises inside the sump, lubricating bearings, camshaft lobes, and timing chain. But every degree of heat becomes a warning. The mechanic listens with his hands, feeling engine mounts, listening through the valve cover, tightening bolts only to loosen others again. A lighter bracket cracks. A stronger brace adds weight. A smoother throttle response costs durability. Engineering becomes negotiation. Every compromise is physical. Every victory is temporary. And in that hidden struggle, where wrenches speak louder than dreams, the car begins to earn its character through resistance, not perfection. Under studio light, the exterior isn't just seen, it is experienced through its parts. The long aluminum hood stretches over the straight-six engine, its panel edges meeting the fenders with precise seams you can run a finger across. The front grille feels like intention, its chrome frame cool to the touch, air passing through narrow openings toward the radiator and intake. The body panels, doors, roof skin, rear quarters curve around the space frame like muscle over bone, every contour shaped by structure beneath. The gullowing hinges rise from the roof rails, their struts holding weight with delicate strength, the latch clicking shut with a sound that belongs only to this car. Steel meets aluminum. Form meets necessity. The wheel arches frame tall tires and polished hubcaps. Light glides along the beltline and settles on the tail, where the rear deck slopes gently above the fuel filler and trunk panel. Nothing about the exterior is decoration. Every line, every crease, every joint feels like engineering first, beauty revealed only because function demanded it. The car doesn't pose. It stands like a sculpture made from purpose. Inside, the experience moves through touch, through materials, through parts built to be lived with. The driver lowers himself past the wide door sill of the space frame and into the leather seat, feeling the firm cushion press against his back, springs and padding working beneath the upholstery. His hands rest on the thin wood-rimmed steering wheel, feeling the grain, the metal spokes, the weight of the steering column connected deep into the front suspension. The gear lever sits tall in the transmission tunnel, its movement direct, mechanical, every shift engaging selector forks and gears he can almost hear beneath the floor. The pedals feel honest. The clutch pedal carries resistance from the pressure plate. The accelerator links straight to the throttle body through cables and rods, and the brake pedal responds through master cylinder and lines like a living mechanism. The dash lays out simple gauges: tachometer, oil pressure, coolant temperature, fuel, each needle moving with the rhythm of the car's heart. The cabin atmosphere breathes leather, paint, gasoline vapor, and time. It doesn't comfort the driver. It connects him to every working part around him. Then the engine comes alive, and the road speaks through components the body can feel. The crankshaft turns, pistons fire, and the sound climbs through the firewall, down into the floor pan, and into the driver's legs. The exhaust pulses under the chassis, heat traveling along pipes toward the rear, warming the cabin edge. The front suspension, control arms, springs, dampers, transmits texture from the asphalt directly into the steering wheel, every ripple translated into motion. The rear swing axle loads and unloads through corners, transferring weight from tire to tire, making the car feel poised one moment and tense the next. The gearbox hums, gears meshing like metal conversation. The differential sends torque outward, the tires gripping, flexing, breathing against the road. Wind presses against the windshield frame. The tachometer needle rises. The engine note sharpens. Power isn't abstract. It moves through shafts, bearings, housings, bolts, and nerves. The driver doesn't simply drive the 300 SL. He feels every component working together. Heat, vibration, friction, balance. A machine speaking through motion, asking him to respect every part that makes it alive. He leans over the open engine bay like a surgeon over a chest he already knows by heart. The space frame sits beneath everything, a web of thin steel tubes each one cut, notched, and welded so that weight disappears but strength remains. He runs his hand along a joint where the front suspension mounts into the frame, feeling how the wishbones, kingpins, and steering arms all trust this lattice to hold together under stress. The inline-six lies canted over, its block and head angled to clear the low bonnet, camshaft driving valves through rockers, timing chain whispering beneath covers. The mechanical injection pump sits like a small heart beside a larger one, sending fuel down hard lines to the cylinders with ruthless precision. Cooling channels snake through block and head, coolant surging toward radiator, fan, and hoses that must never fail. Above, the gullwing hinges anchor into the roof rails, their arms, pins, and gas struts holding the weight of the doors like wings in paws. Every shaft, every bracket, every line has a job. And he knows that if even one of them lies, the whole legend collapses. Not everything about this machine is glory, and the mechanic knows that better than anyone. He has seen the space frame twist under punishment, the stress collecting in places no drawing ever warned about. Rear swing axles that promise traction can also punish the unprepared driver, loading and unloading in a snap that can flick the tail out faster than instinct reacts. Drum brakes fade after hard driving, friction material glazing, pedal travel lengthening, the master cylinder begging for mercy. Heat gathers inside the cabin, creeping in from transmission tunnel, firewall, and exhaust, reminding every occupant that speed has a price. The fuel injection system, for all its brilliance, demands careful tuning. A misadjusted linkage or worn nozzle can turn smooth power into a harsh, uneven surge. This car is not gentle. It will not hide its flaws. It asks for respect, skill, and maintenance, and it punishes arrogance without apology. Its greatness is real. So are its limits. When the car first stepped into the public eye, it did not arrive quietly. Crowds gathered around it at motor shows, drawn in by the improbable sight of doors opening upward and a body that looked like it had slipped out of the wind itself. People stared at the gullwings as if they belonged to an aircraft, not a road car. Some whispered that it looked too radical, too extreme, too advanced for ordinary streets. Others could not look away. Journalists climbed in and out awkwardly over the wide sills, then emerged with a mix of admiration and disbelief written across their faces. They praised its speed, its stability, its racing bloodline made civil, but barely. Awe lived beside suspicion. The 300 SL did not seek universal approval. It divided the room and, in doing so, claimed something more powerful than simple acceptance. It claimed attention, curiosity, and the beginning of myth. For the first owner, it was never just a purchase. It felt like a decision that separated one life from another. He remembered the day he first saw it under the showroom lights, silver paint gleaming, red leather glowing softly inside, the gullwing doors lifted as if inviting him into a different version of himself. Years later, he could still recall the weight of the key in his hand that first morning. The way the engine's first fire sent a tremor not only through the car, but through his chest. This machine carried him through early dawn drives when the streets were empty and the world felt wide open, through late-night returns where the headlights cut a private path home. He marked chapters of his life by the miles on its odometer, a proposal after a coastal drive, a quiet conversation with his father at a fuel stop, the first time his child's hand traced the curve of the fender in silent wonder. Over time, the paint dulled and the leather creased, but his attachment did not fade. The car held not just speed and beauty, but the proof that some moments in life can be driven and never truly left behind. The moment of triumph never arrived alone, it always traveled with fragility hiding in its shadow. The car could conquer mountain passes, glide across long highways, and stand beneath bright lights as a symbol of engineering victory. Yet one mistake, one lapse in respect, could turn glory into danger in a single heartbeat. Drivers learned this truth the hard way. A swing axle taken too aggressively. Brakes fading on a hot descent. Heat pressing into the cabin while the engine demanded more than the body was willing to give. The narrator reflects as the owner remembers, victory always felt earned, never given. To command this car was to walk a line between mastery and humility. It could feel unstoppable at full speed and delicate the moment it rested in silence. The legend grew not because it was invincible, but because it proved something deeper. Greatness is never without risk, and beauty can exist only inches away from vulnerability. The machine was powerful, but it was also mortal, and that realization gave its story a weight that no advertisement, no review, no applause could ever truly hide. In its own time, the car did not belong to everyone. It couldn't. The narrator shifts to social reality. The price of a 300 SL placed it in rare company, far beyond the reach of ordinary families rebuilding their lives. It was a symbol of aspiration in a world still divided by class, industry, and opportunity. Only businessmen, industrial heirs, racing patrons, and cultural elites could step into showrooms where polished floors met polished chrome. For most people, it existed only in photographs, newspaper headlines, and passing glimpses on city streets. A moving sculpture that confirmed how far luxury stood from everyday struggle. The historian notes how exclusivity shaped its identity. Owning one wasn't just mechanical access, it was social belonging. The car became a badge, a quiet announcement that its driver lived above uncertainty, above limits, above compromise. And yet that distance gave it mystique. The fewer who could possess it, the more deeply others dreamed about it. Desire was part of its engineering. Rarity was part of its design. The 300 SL was never built for the majority, and that truth helped define its legend. Time moved forward, and the meaning of value changed. Today, the car no longer lives in showrooms. It lives in auction halls, private collections, glass-walled garages, and curated museums. The narrator watches as numbers rise on bidding screens, figures beyond salaries, beyond lifetimes, beyond logic. Collectors compete not for transportation, but for history measured in profit, prestige, and scarcity. A single chassis number becomes a passport into a new world of wealth symbolism, where rarity is traded like gold and stories are priced by memory rather than mileage. Some see investment, some see reverence, others see distance growing between passion and ownership. The car is applauded again, but differently now. Not for how fast it drives, but for how much it costs. And yet, beneath valuation charts and velvet ropes, its true meaning survives. It was never meant to become currency. But it did. It became proof that time can transform a machine into myth, and myth into an object people are willing to fight and pay to possess. The historian returns, and the story shifts from markets to lineage. Evolution follows every legend, and the 300 SL did not end with itself. The Roadster arrived, reshaping the silhouette while carrying the same heart and engineering spirit beneath its skin. Performance softened in some ways, refined in others. New models appeared in later decades, echoes of the name, reinterpretations of style, attempts to honor a shape that could never fully be repeated. Some borrowed lines. Some borrowed intention. None replaced the original. Instead, they formed a lineage, a family of machines tied not by imitation, but by influence. The gullwing became memory, reference, legacy. Designers studied it. Engineers measured themselves against it. Drivers compared everything else to it. The historian notes how the car did more than inspire automobiles. It shaped culture, imagination, and the way people understood motion as art. Successors lived in its shadow, but also in its light. Every future model carried a question quietly inside its frame. Could anything ever feel like the first time those doors opened to the world? The story returns to the human heart, to a family who refused to let the car become a museum piece or a forgotten machine. It stayed in their garage, then in their barn, then in their carefully guarded memory, passed from father to son, from generation to generation. The narrator listens as the family recalls birthdays celebrated beside it, stories told inside it, and years where it slept beneath dust while life moved forward around it. They did not own the car for status. They kept it because it was woven into their lives. A grandfather's hand on the wheel became a father's lesson, and one day, a child's first glimpse of heritage, not in photographs, but in touch, sound, and presence. The paint faded. The leather cracked. The engine fell silent for seasons at a time. Yet no one could bring themselves to sell it. The car was no longer just metal or value. It was memory made physical, a guardian of family history. And through them, the legend did not survive in auctions or headlines, it survived in love. The mechanic speaks honestly, because ownership is not romance, it is responsibility. The car demands time, money, skill, and patience in equal measure. Fuel injection tuning, valve adjustment, gearbox servicing, swing axle setup, brake overhaul, none of it is simple, none of it cheap. Parts are rare, specialists rarer, and every repair feels like a conversation with the past. Rubber hardens. Seals leak. Lines crack from age. A small noise becomes a warning, and a warning becomes a bill. He watches owners learn the truth. This machine is not a toy. It requires commitment. Insurance, transport, storage, inspection, everything costs more than expected. The car resists casual use. It prefers care, warm-up rituals, thoughtful driving. Some days it rewards you with perfection. Other days it punishes you with failure, reminding you that beauty and fragility live beside each other. And still, no one walks away. Because every frustration is followed by a moment, an engine note, a stretch of road, a breath of memory, that makes the struggle feel like purpose rather than burden. The restoration does not begin with tools, it begins with respect. The car is rolled into the workshop, quiet, tired, covered in dust and years. Panels are lifted, carpets removed. The frame inspected inch by inch. The mechanic, restorer, historian, and owner form a fragile alliance around one question: preserve or change? Original bolts, matching number parts, old leather, factory paint, every detail matters. Some pieces must be replaced to survive. Others must remain to protect authenticity. Parts are hunted across continents, found in warehouses, collections, forgotten shelves, and private trades whispered through networks of specialists. A fender here, a gauge there, a set of period-correct wheels discovered after months of searching. Hands work slowly, choices weigh heavily. Every weld, every stitch, every finish becomes a moral decision between history and perfection. Progress happens in silence, not dramatic, not fast, just steady, hopeful, human. The moment arrives quietly. The car stands complete again, not as new, but as renewed. The key turns. The fuel system primes. The engine hesitates, then breathes, as if exhaling years of sleep in a single pulse. The mechanic closes his eyes for a second, because machines do not cry, but people do. The engine note fills the room, deep and warm, echoing against walls that have heard countless failures and few miracles. The owner places a hand on the fender, feeling vibrations travel through metal into memory. The narrator watches as past and present meet in sound, not loud, not aggressive, but alive. The car does not simply start. It returns, and in that return, Every struggle, every expense, every doubt dissolves into one truth. This was never just a restoration of parts. It was a restoration of story. Time leaves fingerprints no polish can hide. The paint carries tiny cracks where sun and weather once lived. Chrome softens, losing its mirror edge. Leather wrinkles where hands once rested, where journeys left quiet marks. Beneath the floor, steel bears faint scars of corrosion, repaired but remembered. The car does not hide age, it wears it like history stitched into material. The narrator walks around it slowly, seeing time not as damage, but as presence. These imperfections are not flaws. They are evidence, proof that the car existed in real roads, real years, real lives. The scent of old fuel, warm leather, faint oil, it feels like a room that still holds voices long after conversation ends. Nothing here is frozen. Nothing here is perfect. And that is precisely why it feels alive. Across borders, the meaning of the car changes, but its symbol does not fade. In Europe, it carries heritage. In America, it becomes aspiration. In the Middle East and Asia, it transforms into rarity, prestige, and cultural treasure. Auction rooms speak one language. Enthusiasts speak another. Museums place it beneath lights like a sculpture. Private collectors hide it behind glass, guarded and silent. Drivers in distant countries dream of it without ever touching one. The narrator senses how its identity stretches across cultures, wealth, art, engineering, memory, status, nostalgia, all layered onto a single shape. What began as a racing-born road car becomes something larger than origin or geography. The car no longer belongs to one nation, one market, or one history. It belongs to the world, and yet, paradoxically, to no one completely. He never calls himself a mechanic. He calls himself a custodian. The restorer stands beside the car not as its owner, but as its guardian, a man who believes preservation is a duty, not a transaction. His philosophy rejects shortcuts. Paint must breathe. Leather must tell its age. Metal must show where life once moved across it. He refuses to erase history for the sake of shine. Every screw, every bolt, every marking is a sentence in a story he refuses to rewrite. He works slowly, hands steady, heart patient, knowing that restoring such a car is not about making it flawless, it is about making it honest. He keeps worn parts where memory still lives in them, replacing only what survival demands. In his workshop, silence becomes respect. Craft becomes devotion. He does not save a machine. He preserves a soul. And when people ask him why he spends years repairing what others would simply replace, he answers quietly. Because some things are not meant to be improved, they are meant to be understood. In the modern world, surrounded by screens, noise, and machines that hide their workings, the 300 SL still matters for a reason no statistic can explain. Enthusiasts see it and remember a time when engineering felt human, when cars spoke through vibration, sound, smell, and motion instead of software and silence. Dreamers look at it and feel possibility, the proof that imagination and courage can shape metal into something greater than utility. Younger generations do not simply admire its beauty, they sense its honesty, its mechanical truth, its refusal to pretend. The narrator reflects on how it bridges eras, past craftsmanship, present reverence, future inspiration. It stands as a reminder that progress must never erase wonder. That speed once carried meaning beyond numbers. That machines, when built with intention, become reflections of the people who created and lived with them. The 300 SL endures not only because it is rare, but because it speaks to anyone who has ever believed that a dream could be built and driven. In the museum hall, the world becomes quiet. Lights fall softly across its surface, and the car rests behind a low barrier that feels less like protection and more like reverence. People approach slowly, as if entering a sacred space. No one speaks loudly here. The room carries suspense. The awareness that value is not just financial, but emotional, historical, almost spiritual. Collectors see numbers, provenance, documentation. Visitors see memory in metal. Some stare at the gullwing doors and imagine them rising. Others stand still, as if the car might whisper if they listen carefully enough. Time feels suspended. The narrator watches as admiration mixes with distance, the sense that the car has crossed from object to artifact, from possession to symbol. It no longer lives only on roads. It lives in stories, in display, in the tension between what can be owned and what can only be respected. The silence around it becomes part of its meaning, and the longer one stands there, the more one realizes that value does not always reveal itself through price. Sometimes, it reveals itself through awe. And yet, beneath every layer of admiration, one question remains: where does truth end, and where does myth begin? The legend of the 300 SL has grown larger than the car itself, shaped by nostalgia, exaggeration, reverence, and memory. The narrator reflects on the contrast. The machine was once loud, imperfect, demanding, a car that broke drivers' nerves as much as it broke records. But stories polish reality. Myths soften rough edges. Over time, flaws fade and glory remains. The historian wonders whether loving the car means accepting its humanity, its limits, its risk, its fragility, instead of worshipping it as something flawless. The driver remembers fear and wonder living in the same mile. The mechanic remembers burns on his hands and pride in his chest. The car remembers everything. And in that truth lies its deepest power. It is not legendary because it was perfect. It is legendary because it was real. And because the world chose to remember not only what it achieved, but how it felt to stand beside it. In the modern world, where technology hides beneath touchscreens and engines speak in silence instead of sound, the 300 SL still matters in a way few machines ever will. Enthusiasts gather around it not because it is efficient, practical, or logical, but because it carries a meaning that modern cars have forgotten. They see craftsmanship, not automation. They hear the rhythm of pistons, not synthesized noise. They feel connection, the kind that exists between human hands and mechanical parts, not between user and device. Even among younger dreamers who grew up in a digital age, the car becomes something more than history. It becomes an introduction to authenticity. They watch the gullwing doors rise and understand, instinctively, that this design was not created to impress, but to solve a structural challenge: beauty emerging from necessity. They study the space frame, the fuel-injected straight six, the unapologetic driving experience, and realize that greatness once demanded courage, risk, and intention. This car is not relevant because it is old. It is relevant because it represents a philosophy, that machines should be built with meaning, not convenience, and that dreams are real only when someone dares to turn them into metal, sound, and motion. Inside the museum hall, the world slows down as the car stands beneath soft lights, separated from visitors by a simple barrier that feels less like protection and more like respect. Rarity hangs in the air like a quiet tension. The knowledge that only a few were ever built, and even fewer survived with their stories intact. Collectors walk around it silently, not out of intimidation, but reverence. Some lean forward slightly, studying the curves of the bodywork, the gullwing hinges, the polished spokes of the steering wheel. Others simply stand still, experiencing awe rather than observation. The room carries a hush, not emptiness, but anticipation, as if everyone believes that the car might begin speaking if the silence remains long enough. Value here is not only written in auction records or historical documents. It is felt in heartbeat, memory, and disbelief that something so rare still exists in the same world as all of us. Children see a shape unlike anything they've known. Older visitors feel their past return in a single glance. And somewhere between admiration and distance, the car transforms from object to artifact, a living story suspended in time, preserved not only by glass and security, but by awe. And yet, the longer one stands beside it, the more a subtle question begins to form. How much of this legend belongs to truth, and how much belongs to myth? Over decades, admiration has polished the rough edges of reality. People remember its speed, its victories, its elegance. But they forget the heat of the cabin, the demanding swing-axle suspension, the cost of ownership, the fear that lived inside every fast corner. The narrator reflects as the historian speaks carefully. Legends are not born from perfection. They are born from tension between greatness and limitation. The driver recalls nights where confidence turned into caution. The mechanic remembers burns on his knuckles and broken expectations before achievements finally appeared. The myth says the car was untouchable. The truth says it required respect, skill, discipline, and humility. And the car itself, if memory were allowed to speak, would not erase its flaws. It would carry them as proof that beauty was earned, not granted. That every mile carried risk. That every triumph existed beside fragility. The emotional question lingers quietly in the room. Do we love the legend, or do we love the truth that made the legend possible? We return to the present moment, back inside the dim garage where the driver stands beside the car, his reflection softened across its polished surface. The world outside has changed. Decades have passed, technology has evolved, and life has moved forward. Yet here, time feels suspended, as if every mile the car once traveled is waiting inside it. He places his hand on the fender, and the connection feels different now. Not nostalgia, not fantasy. Understanding. He now sees the triumph and the fragility together. The victories, the cost, the risks, the beauty, the mechanical struggle. The human determination that built both the machine and the memories tied to it. He knows that starting the engine doesn't only awaken sound, it awakens a past that belongs to everyone who ever touched this car, drove it, built it, repaired it, or dreamed of it. For a moment, he hesitates, not out of fear, but respect. He understands that this is not just a machine waiting to be driven, it is a story waiting to continue. And as he breathes in slowly, he realizes that he is no longer only looking at history, he is standing inside it. If the car could speak, its voice would not rise in excitement or pride, it would speak softly, with the weight of years carried in every word. It would remember the roads, the rain, the heat, the fear, the joy, the hands that built it, and the hearts that carried its story forward when its engine grew silent. It would not call itself a legend. It would call itself a companion, to the drivers who trusted it, to the mechanics who saved it, to the families who kept it instead of letting it disappear. It would remember every turn taken at the edge of courage, every long, straight road where the world felt open, every garage where silence became memory. It would admit its limits, its imperfections, its fragility. And yet, it would also say that it was grateful to have been lived with, not displayed alone, grateful to have existed in motion rather than fading into obscurity. It would not ask to be worshipped. It would ask to be remembered honestly, not as a perfect machine, but as a living one. And as the day fades outside, the final scene unfolds in quiet light. The garage door lifts just enough for sunset to spill across the floor, gold warmth settling across the car's surface like a final blessing. The driver stands beside it, not as a conqueror or collector, but as a witness to everything it has been. Shadows stretch. The engine remains silent, not because the story has ended, but because it no longer needs noise to prove its meaning. The narrator reflects gently as the world softens around them. Legends are not preserved by motion alone. Sometimes they are preserved by stillness, by the space where memory and presence meet. The car does not shine like something new. It breathes like something alive. And in that last moment, as light fades into evening, one quiet truth settles over both man and machine. Some stories are not meant to be driven away from. They are meant to stay and continue living in the hearts of those who remember them. The inline-six engine sits at the center of judgment, not as a showpiece, but as a test of engineering honesty. In the 300 SL, it leans slightly to the side, compacting profile and lowering bonnet line, something BMW of the era pursued differently, preferring upright precision over aerodynamic compromise. Rolls-Royce engines, smooth and reserved, were built for silence, while this one was built for intent. You don't just look at it, you assess it. You watch the Bosch fuel injection pump, the hard fuel lines, the way response lives inside the linkages. You listen for the timing chain under tension, the whisper that reveals discipline, not comfort. The exhaust manifold doesn't simply route gases, it declares how heat leaves the engine, how the car chooses to suffer or survive under load. And beneath it all, the oil sump holds more than lubrication, it holds time, endurance, and risk. A professional doesn't see parts, he sees philosophy. He reads every surface like a sentence. And in that comparison across automobile history, the SL feels like the one car that was never built to relax, only to prove. Engine mounts speak before the car ever moves. In the 300 SL, they transmit honesty. Not vibration for the sake of roughness, but communication. Rolls-Royce softened engine mounts to erase motion, to create dignity on the road. Bemble preserved some feedback for driver engagement. But the SL keeps connection alive like a nerve. The prop shaft carries rotation through the chassis, and a seasoned enthusiast listens to it, not just with ears, but with bones. You feel whether the shaft runs true, whether alignment speaks of precision or fatigue. Then, the space frame chassis reminds you why this machine exists in a different category. Tubes instead of panels. Strength instead of mass. Where others used structure to support luxury, this chassis supports speed, risk, and ambition. It flexes only to prove that engineering has limits, and that those limits matter. A driver who knows machines does not admire the frame for beauty. He respects it because it tells him the truth. Every weld is a promise, and every failure would have been written in metal instead of words. The swing-axle rear suspension separates the 300 SL from cars that merely behaved, because this one demanded respect. Rolls-Royce suspended passengers in comfort, their rear geometry tuned for smoothness and weight. BMW pursued balance, agility, predictability. But the SL chose danger and brilliance together. Under pressure, weight shifts through that axle like a living force, and every professional senses it before a corner begins. The driver feels warning through the seat, a subtle tilt, a hint of stored energy that waits to release. This is not a flaw. It is a test of discipline. Those who blame the suspension misunderstand it. Those who master it remember it forever. Drum brakes add another layer of tension. They fade when heat rises, when ambition exceeds preparation, and compared to Rolls-Royce's calm elegance or BMW's more forgiving setups, the SL reminds you that performance always has a cost. Professionals do not judge it harshly. They judge it honestly. They accept that respect is the only safe language between man and machine. And in that fragile line between control and chaos, the legend breathes. Inside the cabin, judgment begins at the steering column, not just in how it turns, but in how resistance travels through it. Rolls-Royce engineers isolated motion to protect refinement, BMW preserved tactile dialogue. But the 300 SL allows the driver to feel the road through shaft, joints, and frame. The steering play matters. A fraction too soft, and it feels uncertain. A fraction too tight, and it betrays strain. Then, gauge sweep smoothness becomes the measure of mechanical grace. A needle that trembles tells a story of aging linkages and worn precision. One that glides speaks of maintenance, loyalty, and respect. Chrome bezel alignment is not vanity. It is craftsmanship proof. Every misalignment tests authenticity. Even the glove box hinge damping becomes meaningful to the professional eye. A hinge that falls harshly feels careless. One that moves softly feels preserved. Seat frame creak under load is another truth. Rolls-Royce isolated such sensations, BMW balanced them, but here every sound belongs to memory. The 300 SL refuses to separate the driver from the machine. And to those who understand, that is not imperfection, it is intimacy. Pedal travel depth is not simply ergonomics, it is character. The clutch tells you whether the gearbox is confident or fragile, whether years have strengthened or softened its resolve. Brake pedal resistance reveals hydraulic honesty, the kind Rolls-Royce hid behind refinement, the kind BMW engineered for control. But the SL exposes without apology. The throttle responds through linkages, not electronics, and every millimeter becomes tactile truth. Professional drivers judge cars through feet as much as through hands. Cabin heat rising through the transmission tunnel is not discomfort, it is physics speaking. Rolls-Royce banished heat in the name of luxury. BMW managed it in the name of usability. The SL allows it to exist because performance and discipline share space with endurance and fatigue. Transmission vibration pulse becomes another layer of experience, a reminder that motion is mechanical, not virtual. When enthusiasts speak of feeling everything, this is what they mean. Cars like this do not hide their identity. They let it live beneath your skin. And for those who understand, that sensation is not burden. It is truth. Door hinge resistance matters more than most people realize. The way a door opens, the weight, the motion, the pause halfway through, these are signals. Professionals read them like handwriting. Rolls-Royce doors glide with aristocratic certainty, BMW doors close with purposeful authority. The 300 SL doors, especially gullwings, carry tension, history, gravity. Gullwing gas strut compression is not simply a mechanism. It is a test of survival. Too weak, and the door collapses. Too strong, and the frame suffers under tension. The movement feels like memory stretching upward. The steering play and resistance, the gearbox gate tension, they belong in the same vocabulary. Together, they tell whether the machine remains disciplined or tired. This is not visual beauty. This is mechanical poetry. And every slight shift, every faint sound, every ounce of effort becomes meaningful to the one who truly listens. In its own time, the Mercedes-Benz 300 SL was never simply purchased. It was reached for, like a dream that only a few could touch. In the mid-1950s, when ordinary family cars cost a fraction of the price, the gullwing stood in a world of its own, carrying a price of around $7,000 in America. A figure so high that it felt less like transportation and more like admission into another life entirely. Owning one meant stepping into a space where ambition, success, and courage met beneath rising doors and polished steel. Decades have passed, yet the meaning of value has only grown deeper. Today, the same machine that once challenged the limits of engineering can command between $1 and $2 million at auction, and the rarest, most storied examples rise even higher, beyond $3 million, not because of wealth alone, but because of everything the car represents: survival, heritage, risk, beauty, memory, and the spirit of an era that refused to fade. The price has changed, but the truth remains. This was never just a car to afford. It was, and still is, a dream people are willing to chase across time. The story of the Mercedes-Benz 300 SL is not only about engineering, rarity, or price. It is about everything a machine can carry when it becomes part of human life. It holds risk and beauty, courage and uncertainty, triumph and fragility, all inside a body built from steel and intention. It reminds us that progress was once personal, that machines once spoke through sound and motion instead of silence and software. And now, the memory belongs to all of us who stood beside it, admired it, dreamed of it, or preserved it so history would not fade. If this journey moved you, if it made you feel nostalgia, inspiration, or respect, then support the story. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us, which part of the 300 SL touched you the most? Its engineering, its danger, its beauty, or its legacy? This car was never meant to be ordinary. It was built in a world recovering from hardship, created by hands that believed discipline and imagination could shape the future. Every weld, every hinge, every vibration carries proof of that belief. The 300 SL teaches us that greatness requires effort, that beauty lives beside responsibility, and that legends survive not because they are perfect, but because people choose to protect them. Today, it stands as a reminder that craftsmanship still matters, that machines can have presence, and that memory can live inside metal and sound. If this story connected with you, if it made you reflect on history, passion, and the meaning of engineering, then help us continue telling stories like this. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and write a comment below. Tell us, what do you admire most about the 300 SL? Its innovation, its character, or the way it makes you feel? A machine becomes a legend only when people give it meaning, and the 300 SL earned that meaning through drivers, mechanics, families, restorers, and dreamers who refused to let it disappear. They carried its story from racetracks to workshops, from garages to museums, from one generation to the next. The car is powerful, but the people around it are what keep it alive. And now, that story continues with you. Whether you love cars for engineering, history, design, or emotion, this journey belongs to everyone who still believes that machines can hold stories inside them. If this film resonated with you, support the channel by liking the video, subscribing, and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Tell us, if you could choose one classic dream car to own or drive, which one would it be and why? And what was your favorite moment or detail from the 300 SL in this story? As the final light fades across its surface, the 300 SL does not feel like a relic from the past. It feels like a bridge between eras, reminding us that some creations are more than objects. They become symbols of courage, innovation, and the human desire to build something unforgettable. This car may rest in silence now, but its story continues every time someone remembers it, studies it, preserves it, or simply stands beside it in awe. Thank you for taking this journey with us, for stepping into history, emotion, and motion. If you want more stories like this, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. Tell us, what part of this journey meant the most to you? The engineering, the restoration, the human stories, or the feeling that some legends never truly fade? And perhaps that is why the 300 SL still matters. Not because it sits behind barriers or shines beneath museum lights, but because it continues to live in the people who remember what it feels like to stand beside it. Every scratch on the metal, every mark on the leather, every whisper of heat from the engine, these are not flaws. They are proof that this machine was lived with, trusted, challenged, and loved. It reminds us that history isn't preserved only in books or archives. Sometimes it survives in steel, sound, and silence. If this story resonated with you, if this car awakened a memory from your own life, a road you once drove, a dream you once chased, then we'd love to hear it.